is currently the regular presenter of the weekly BBC Radio 4 program, Something Understood. Sir Mark Tully spent the first decade of his childhood in India before going to England for schooling. He was educated at the Tyford School, Marlborough College, and at Trinity Hall, Cambridge.
Thank you very much for that long introduction to me. I would like to start off by saying how honored I am to be here and to be asked to give this prestigious address. I'm also honored to sit on the same dais as these distinguished gentlemen. You've heard their names about 5 times already, so I won't repeat them. I hope that I can get somewhere near living up to the expectations that Dr. Matthews has led you to expect from me. I chose the title as soon as I knew I was to come and speak to you. I immediately knew the title I wanted to use because I have been a great admirer of E.F. Schumacher, and this year I had the privilege of spending 3 days in the Schumacher College in Devon. And I've been a great admirer of Schumacher's because I basically believed, long before I ever knew I would come here, that small is indeed beautiful. But if I can start by telling you a story, which I think, this being Kerala, many of you will understand. It is the story of which happened within the church, where all the orders of the church, instead of thinking that small is beautiful, thought that big is the best. And they wanted to find out which was the biggest and which was the best. And so they were sent by the Pope to go and kneel down and pray until God gave them the answer. And nothing happened until they were all quite elderly gentlemen and their knees were giving way and they were getting more and more tired and exhausted. And suddenly a dove flew overhead and dropped a little message. And the most agile of the monks and fathers and all the rest of them who were kneeling there leapt forward and picked it up. And his face fell at first, and then suddenly there was a smile on his face, because when he read it out, he said, "The note says, 'You are all equal in my sight,' signed God, Society of Jesus." And as you know, the Society of Jesus is the Jesuit order. I tell you that story just to say something contrary to it to you, because I don't think God would have been interested in who is the biggest, because he's interested in people. People matter to him, and Schumacher's motto was economics if people matter. In other words, the concern of Schumacher was that economics have to take into concern the concerns of people, have to make people matter. And Schumacher saw this in the context of small is beautiful. So what I want to do is to try and say some words to you about why I believe small is beautiful and to fit them into an economic and business framework. I do this with considerable trepidation, bearing in mind on the platform here you have a distinguished banker from the business sector and 2 highly distinguished economists. And when I this morning met Professor Cabra, who I'd not met before, and he told me that he was going to be here as the chairman of the meeting, my spirits sank, because I thought, what is he going to think of my economics, I being something of an amateur in the sphere of economics. So let's see what he thinks, and perhaps he'll have a go at me after it's over, who knows. I want to also start with saying something else, which I believe in very profoundly, which I have learned from India, and which I think is so relevant. And that is that I am not against big where big is required. I am not a fanatic for small in such a way that I think everything has to be and should be small. I believe very strongly in one thing which I have learned from Indian culture, which is balance, and looking for compromises, and very often looking for the middle way. So when I criticize big business, big industry, and that sort of thing, it does not mean that I am wholly opposed to it or see no good in it. I firmly believe that far too much of our dialogue nowadays is conducted on the basis of putting people in two opposite corners and getting them to shout at each other. And you see this every night on your television sets. Last night I was watching the television. I really rarely watch it because, but I happened to be feeling rather tired and I couldn't think of anything else to do, so I watched it for a bit. And there the argument got so vicious that Manishankar Iyer walked out of the show. He was sitting at home, but he walked out of camera shot. So please don't think that what I am saying means that I believe absolutely that small is best, or I believe absolutely that big is bad, or any of the other things I'm going to tell you. But why do people matter when you think in terms of small is beautiful? What is the link between them, the economics and the business? Well, I think one of the obvious links is that on the whole, small tends to be much more humane in the workplace. Small businesses, small industries tend to be much more creative places for people to work in, places where people can easily feel loyal, places where people feel that they are contributing and that their contribution is rewarded. They become, as I say, the bigger they get, I believe, on the whole, the less and less humane they are. I was deeply shocked when I learned that my old organization, the BBC, had outsourced its human relations. If you outsource your human relations, that is surely an example or evidence that you do not really care about your staff. And this is partly, in my view, because the BBC has become so big and so bureaucratic. When I joined the BBC, I actually joined in the Human Relations Department, and we were very, very much part of the BBC then. I think that the whole change from personnel management to HR is evidence that in the modern business, modern ways of doing business, actually the whole business of being concerned about your staff has been downgraded. Touched on today of local economics served, local economies served by small industries and small businesses, small production units. And again, one of the reasons I think why in Britain, in my own country, there is a big move now to try and reconstruct local economies, because there is a feeling that without a local economy, your community is at best weakened and can, in fact, be destroyed. And obviously, a local economy depends on small businesses and small providers of various services. If you look at small economies, it seems to me that two things are essential to them. One is the idea of neighborhood, And again, this can best be served by your neighbors producing the things that you want. In other words, small businesses. And the other is subsistence, which means people providing what the local economy needs in order to subsist. And therefore, there is a danger that a local economy can become something of a protectionist economy. But nevertheless, if you have a local economy, you will, I believe, have an economy in which, first of all, as I said, the businesses and everyone will be small, and secondly, there will be a sense of neighborhood and of community. And one of the things I think which are high mobility, are big businesses, are mono brands sweeping the world doing, and of course the whole business of the virtual world is breaking down communities. But we all by nature live in communities. We all by nature, I believe, flourish far more if we live in communities and live as neighbors one with the other. So why should neighborhoods flourish if things are small? Well, one of course is because, as I have said, people matter, and in a neighborhood people have to matter, otherwise the neighborhood doesn't work. Another one is, of course, because if you have these neighborhood, the idea of neighborhood and the idea of small, then you do not have huge, great shops, and I know this is a controversial subject now, but and huge, great providers coming in from outside who do not understand the needs of the neighborhood. Another very important point, I think, in small economies is that they put something of a brake, at least, on migration. I think one of the most unhealthy things which is happening in India at the moment is this migration from rural areas, especially into the big cities. You see in your own city of Cochin, the other day I saw a figure that Delhi, which was 3.5 million, I think, when I first came in 1965, if you take Greater Delhi altogether, is 22 million people, second largest urban area in the world, second only to Tokyo. Again, if you have small businesses and neighborhoods functioning, there will not be that need to migrate. And I find when I go into villages and I ask people whether they like going out to towns and cities to work, almost invariably they say they would rather be able to work somewhere where they could hope to come back to their own home at night to sleep. So these are some of the reasons that that neighborhoods, small economies with small businesses would make an ideal answer. Now I say that use the word ideal because I want to go back to that concept of balance. Obviously, we can't all, sadly, live in a world of small villages, perhaps as Gandhiji envisaged. But what we can understand is what was the underlying motive of Gandhiji when he spoke about villages and India living in its villages. And we can try, with the help of small businesses, in urban areas as well as in rural areas, I think, to reconstruct communities. Now, what are the threats to small businesses and small industries? Well, I believe that one of them, and I say this with great trepidation, is that economics are too dominant. Now, we can't do without economists, and they have a lot of wisdom.